Morning, everyone. Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah. Uh, Not the main the main experience of this time, which we call the holiday season, which is always interesting to me, is that it's the darkest time of the year. This is not only the shortest days, but the new moon time. So we're not even getting illuminated by the moon when the moon is so small. So in all of our holidays, whatever holiday we might observe, core to it is bringing light to the darkness. That's what this season is about, bringing light to the darkness. And I think of us as that's what we are. We're light bringers. That's like our work in this world. It's not just what we do in the dark, but all the work that we do, um, with ethics, basically. Being kind instead of cruel, listening instead of cutting people off, um, supporting each other. Supporting each other is really extraordinary, as there are, you know, untold numbers of people who dedicate their lives to undermining people around them, climbing on top of them to get higher. I like you guys. It's really, I guess, a way of saying that. And I'm grateful to you for the work that you do. So I guess my suggestion for this holiday season is to really be conscious of yourself as a light bringer, not just sort of the external part of this season, but the internal part as well. And when the solstice comes, when it's the moment that's the darkest time of the year, um, do some kind of ritual for yourself. Somewhere in there, to recognize yourself as a light bringer. It's really important that you know that that's what you're doing. So I had a conversation with someone this week. Maybe I had more than one on the topic. On the topic of being the navigator, being the pilot. And in the conversation, it was sort of, the pilot is the one in charge. As the captain of the boat. So we're really talking about you. So the captain of the boat, the one who pilots, the one who steers, the one who chooses. And then there's the navigator. And the navigator's task is to be absolutely clear. That's the purpose of navigation, is to be able to go from where you are to where you are heading. And the navigator charts the course. The navigator points out obstacles in the way. The navigator, is constantly suggesting directions to choose. And somehow or another, and I wish I had a few more days to reflect on this so I could have gotten the language that I wanted to use, but whatever. The thing that keeps coming up for me is this function of the navigator, this you as the navigator. The navigator doesn't stop functioning when the pilot changes directions as you're sailing your boat. So I think of the changes of directions are the result of the conditions that you're in at any given time. You walk in a room and there are particular people there. You walk in a different room, there's a different group of people there. You walk in a room, there's no one there. Right? As a result of the first group, the other group, being alone, conditions are different. Conditions are different, dependent on who you're with, where you are, what you're doing. And this is what we focus on much of the time. This is what fills our consciousness, is the details of who we're with, where we are, what we're doing, and so forth. The navigator's role is to remain on duty, present, charting the course, regardless of the conditions. Just because you walked in a room with this group of people, the navigator doesn't walk away. To be able to have awareness of where you're headed, that's the navigator's job, to be aware of where you're headed. So for instance, let's say the first group of people you walk in with are people from a work environment. And let's say that you're going to a meeting that has been called because there's something going on. There's an issue. And all the flurry of emotions, body experiences, mental processes that accompanying walking into a meeting of people in a work environment where you're dealing with an issue. We know those. We have a lot of familiarity with that kind of a situation. And the details of what the issue is, what the personalities of the people, where your role is, that, all of this stuff, that's what consumes your attention. But this is just a moment. It's one meeting with a select group of people who are not the only people in your life. There's lots of other people, lots of other configurations in your life. The weather is still happening when you're going to the meeting. The question of what's for dinner, how are, how's this going? How's that going? People in your family that are, going through something that's in the back. There's so many other things besides this meeting. How do you navigate through all this? Well, of course, the first thing a navigator needs to know is your destination. Where you're headed. This meeting certainly isn't where you're headed. This isn't the point of your life. No matter how important the meeting is, this is not what's central to your intention as a living being. What is central to your intention as a living being? You know? Is it kindness? That would be nice. Then you would go to this meeting and you would, the navigator would remind you you're aiming toward kindness, regardless of what happens in the meeting. Is it freedom? Is it freedom that you're looking for? Is that the what you're navigating toward? That's quite a wonderful goal. Quite a wonderful goal. Well, how does one experience freedom? And the answer is really by not getting entangled with your own preferences. You go into this meeting and you have a sense of what's right and what's wrong. You have a sense of what you want to see as an outcome and what you don't want to see as an outcome. And the question then becomes, how much binding is there? How bound are you to these beliefs, these stories, these preferences, these points of view? How much binding do you want in your life? Certainly binding is the opposite of freedom. So if you're navigating toward freedom, then being at this meeting with a set view, a preference for a particular outcome, is binding. It moves away from where the navigation should be occurring toward freedom. So if you showed up at the meeting saying, I have no idea what the outcome will be. I will work toward an outcome that seems wholesome, that deals with the issue at hand in a way that is kind and not harmful. So now you enter the room with the second group of people. Different time, different day, same day, whatever. And this is a group of friends. It's an important group of friends. And you walk in the room, and in a moment of real insight and mindfulness, you watch how you assign to yourself and to each of your friends a role, a who they are, a who I am. I become this person when I'm with my friends. They're like this when they're with me. This is what I'm familiar with. You notice how you have like a story of you with each of these people, and with yourself with these people. Imagine being content with that instead of wishing it was different. Imagine knowing as these stories appear that they're stories, they're creations. You fabricated each of these views. And the navigator pops up and says, we're navigating toward freedom. So there may be a temptation to say, well, these are all views that I could be free of. But you have to be careful not moving toward aversion. I don't like this view of me. I don't like how I'm being at the moment with these people. Or I don't like how she is, or he is. Or I do like, I love, I'm like, you know, is it okay that I'm like attached to my love for this person or these people? If we are content with all of these stories that arise, and we allow the navigator to steer our boat toward freedom, then anything that happens that confirms our story and supports our story, and anything that happens that is in conflict with our story, negates our story, is all met with joy. Well, you look at that. Life is always this way. Sometimes I feel supported by like the stories I carry. Sometimes I don't. I'm mindful. I know when this occurs. I know not to be bound to these stories and yet to enjoy story making. It's just story making. We're never going to stop. That's exactly part of our everything makeup. Every part of our body and our mind, our heart, dwells in story making. I am content with this. And the navigator reminds me, freedom, we're aiming for freedom. Don't get bound to each story. Don't love a story so much you don't want to let go of it when situations change. I always think of this person as really able to navigate life so smoothly. I'm envious. And the person then sits you down in this room and starts asking you for support for some internal strife that's going on for them. Is it startling that they're not okay? Are you pushing them away because you depend on them as being the way you see them? Or are you unbound and allowing the moment to flow as it flows? That would be navigating toward freedom. And now at some part of the day, you're alone in a room. Been a busy day with different groups of people. You've had to do some really diligent work in staying mindful and awake. Now that you're alone, maybe you're tired. Maybe that was a lot of energy. Maybe you think, oh, I'm going to lose myself in a book or making dinner or TV show or, or this podcast that I've been meaning to. So when that attraction of I'm going to lose myself arises, because I'm tired and I've had a lot of work to deal with all the, um, oh, right, the work of freedom. It was tiring in those two groups. And now I'm alone. Isn't it okay if I just relax? The navigator is still present. The navigator um, is saying that you're okay. The navigator is reminding you that where we're trying to head is freedom. That's where we're trying to get to. The navigator is accepting your tiredness. You know, maybe it's time to, the boat's been traveling at so many knots. Slow down. Slow down. What if you remember that you have a practice standing in this room by yourself, and you remember, what if I just sit for a minute? Formal practice with the breath, informal, I'm just sitting and being here. Just resting for a moment. Allowing, you know, whatever has gotten scattered about during the day to come home and rest. A sense of integrating, a sense of settling, a sense of calm. What if at that moment you decide to unbind yourself from language? Just, it's fine if you want to think, but don't use language. Just rest for a little while in what's present. The feeling of your feet on the floor, the temperature of the room on your skin. What's the lighting like? What if you just come home to where you are, to whatever's present? Perhaps you'll still need distraction and you'll still, get up and go turn on a podcast or do whatever to fill the space. Because there's an obsessive energy that wants to go over what happened at that meeting, what happened when you were with your friends, to recycle it and rehearse it, re-rehearse it, and play with it and make imaginary plans. This is what our bodies, minds, and hearts do. That's what being human is. This is not a flaw, but we do get to choose. That's the role of the navigator, to say, if we went in this direction, there would be smoother sailing. toward our destination of freedom. And then you choose. Sometimes you choose something that feels quiet. You make a cup of tea. You chop a lot of vegetables. You know, you do a little art. And you just focus your attention on what you're doing. And soften the thinking. It could still go on, but it's no longer central. That's skillful. Having faith in your ability to do exactly what it is that you intend. To go into, a work meeting with a freedom from needing a specific outcome. To gather with a group of friends without having to be bound with images of yourself and others, but letting things move and flow as they actually are. And to take time alone in a manner that's nourishing and wholesome, caring, rather than simply distraction with entertainment. Having faith that this is all work you can do. Maybe not every moment, certainly not every moment, but you can know that the navigator doesn't stop functioning when you change what you're attending to. The navigator can always be present. Sometimes you can just call it my practice. Not in a sense of sitting meditation practice, but of a way of life. Your practice is where you live. You're abiding in a space facing freedom, being skillful, practicing kindness, harmlessness, not letting your preferences make choices for you. You acknowledge your preference, and then you choose skillfully, with care and kindness, with respect and love. So the question for this morning's practice is, how do I be content? How do I have faith that I am far along on a journey that I began long ago? That on this journey I have developed many, many skills. I have been taught wisdom. My sight is getting clearer every year. Where I am now just is this moment in the journey, this place on the path. And I trust the navigator. I trust my intention to be free. So in practice, rest exactly with what is. Whatever is arising in your experience, whatever thoughts or sounds or sights, sensations in the body, emotions that flow through, let them be. Practice contentment. Practice resting with It's like this. There is no need for anything present to go away. It's like this. There is no need for anything that's not present to be brought in. We're good. We're good. So let's practice this.